but we're there.
Okay, good. It's not moving on my screen, but I think it's just a delay on everything. So I see it.
We're there.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Great. Well,
takes a few minutes to get all the technology set up.
Always.
That is up and going. We are recording this so that if somebody hops in late or has to leave early, you can come back and watch the rest of it. Many of you have already registered for this, in which case you should have already received an email with the tool we're going to share today. If you haven't, it is not too late. We will send that out again after this with the replay. So feel free to register for that, and I will drop the link for that in the comments. Just 1 second. Okay, so today we're talking about onboarding. Brenda, do you want to talk about our books real quick and how this part came?
Certainly. So once upon a time, Amanda and I worked together at a different company. Now we are business partners together in our own company, but we worked together in a different company, and we created a hiring process together. And I was at a conference one time, and I was talking to a CEO about his needs, and he said, well, I really need help with hiring people. And I was like, we got you. We got this process. And I texted Amanda, who was not a writer at the time, and said, Amanda, you've got to write the process in a book. We've got to get the book. And she's like, yeah, not going to happen. I'm a numbers girl. And I said, eat your words. I'm an author and we're going to do this. And so when we decided to join forces and become Joy of Pursuit, she said, guess what I've been working on? And I said, what? And she said, this book. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And I was so excited, and it was exactly what it needed to be. And we went in and polished it up. And I said, but you know what? There's actually more than this one book. It's the full employee journey. And so she was like, I'm sorry, you got me to write one book. Now you want me to write how many? And I said, well, it's 4 really, right? And I had already kind of had the third book in my head for years, the retention process, because my kind of platform is worth. And I believe that there should be a culture of worth in the workplace. And so that book was always stirring in me for years, since my first book was published back in 2018. And so I was like, this is it. It all comes together. It's a full process. So it's the hiring process. Then you have to onboard people correctly. Then the retention process, how to retain them. And then we follow up with an exit process, which surprisingly is so overlooked by people, but it really protects people's company. So they really need to be wise about the exit process. I love that all of the books can work separately. So if you're not in the hiring process right now, but you're like, I need to retain my team because people are dropping like flies around here, then grab the retention process. And then the exit process to cover you if people continue to drop. If you're a brand new startup and you're like, okay, I need to hire some people and I don't even know how to write a job description. Well, great. Grab the hiring process, follow that, get on the email list and get the replay from last time. And you'll really be set up for success in that area. So it's really designed to come in at any area that you need in the employee journey, but it covers the full journey. And we're excited about it because we have experienced the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we're trying to prevent that for everyone else. Did I leave anything out?
No, I think that was a good recap of kind of how we ended up here and what we're doing. So let's dive in to onboarding, which is the topic for today. And I thought we'd start with talking a little bit first. For those of you that are joining, we still got a few people coming in, but let us know in the comments, what are your biggest onboarding challenges? And maybe we can tackle some of those as we're working through this today. Onboarding it can be a little tricky. You know, a lot of companies put so much time and effort into hiring and recruiting and how do we get those right people in the door, and so much effort and resources. And then it's the first day for someone, first week. And then what are we doing? Do we just throw them to the wolves and hope that they survive, sink or swim? And that's obviously not what we want to do. So retention is a huge topic for all businesses. We want to retain these employees that we put so much time and effort into. And retention begins with onboarding well. So this is why it's such a critical piece of the employee journey, because when we onboard them well, they're going to be more productive. They're going to really get to be a part of the team better, and teamwork and team success will always lead to business success. And then you have less turnover, and turnover is so costly to replace, to go back through the hiring, the downtime, the loss of production that may happen depending on what type of role they are. And then also sometimes turnover, there's a lot of drama that can be associated with it if things do end on good terms, right? And we want to avoid that as much as possible. Now, it is inevitable, it will happen that you'll have turnover, but this is a great way to reduce it.
And
So
it's really a great way to get productivity going from day one, right? It's not like you're bringing someone in and oh, we're going to sit them in this room for 4 hours of orientation, and then we're going to move them over here for their, one time I had this job where I was the intro program manager in the Air Force for people coming in. And so I had to take them around to all these different blood stations where they got their blood drawn over here for this. And then they got their shots over here for this. And then it was like this full day of just orientation stuff. And it was the most boring. I'm like, can we make this fun? And luckily they let me make it fun, but it was painful. And people don't like, I mean, that's not how anybody wants to start their first day. Just like, oh, great. The boring is stuff.
And there are going to be boring parts of onboarding because you have to start talking about policies and what's the team handbook. And those things are not exciting to most people. And you do have to cover those because they're very important for legality reasons and just so people know what's happening. But we also need to couple that with, let's engage the employee. Let's set them up for success so that they're excited about their job and know how they contribute to the business. And that leads into a really surprising statistic that Brenda and I were actually discussing earlier. And the Harvard Business Review recently said that 60% of companies report that they do not set specific goals for their new hire. So that's what we're going to focus on today is goals. How do we set those goals? How do we make sure they can reach those goals and accomplish them well? Because without goals, they're going to feel lost. And you're excited about working for a new company, but what are you supposed to do? What is the onboarding time frame? How long do you have for these goals? Did your supervisor or onboarding specialist or whoever it is that is working with them really work with them to talk about what their goals are? And when you just say something of, oh, onboarding is 90 days, we need you trained in 90 days. Okay.
That's helpful. Trained on what?
It is a goal, but we really need to be specific with it and work with them so that they can accomplish the goal, because setting goals and setting that expectation without the tools and milestones to get you there is going to be a little worthless. So
absolutely. And people are happier when they're fulfilled, and people are fulfilled when they're achieving. So if you give them a goal to achieve and they're striving towards something, they're working towards something, they're going to already feel needed at the company, fulfilled. They're going to show up with a purpose and not just show up going, oh, I'm still onboarding. It's been 3 months and I'm still trying to figure this out. We know someone personally who worked for a major company, took 4 months, I think, to get hired. Was it about 4 months?
Yeah,
and then the onboarding was another 3 months. 7 months they invested in this guy, and then he has had it and he's leaving, and it's been around a year, and he's like, there's just too much of this stuff going on and not enough actual productivity. And you've got to be intentional about it. So I love, Caitlin's already put a kind of a question up, and I think we can tackle it, Amanda. She says, getting managers involved and engaged with onboarding is a struggle. And that is so true. So I know I have some tips or thoughts on it. Do you have some as well, Amanda? Do you want to start?
Yes, I think, well, first of all, you're not alone with that one, Caitlin. And I think that's a big disconnect that a lot of companies sees, that onboarding, when it comes to the HR team, we know what we're doing. We've got a plan. We've got our goals that we're trying to meet, and we've got it all there. But then there's a disconnect because we are handing the employee over to work with their manager. And that's where the managers drop the ball, because a lot of times they see it as counterproductive. They have other things on their plate. Their managers breathing down their neck to make production or whatever the reason may be, or maybe they're just a little disinterested. There could be a multitude of reasons, right, of why they're dropping the ball there. But this is where, I mean, there's a lot of different ways we could work around it. Brittany, there's something on the tip of your tongue. You go ahead and say yours.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're walking through the goal map today. And I think that the first goal with the goal map would probably be, Caitlin, because you said you work in HR. So the first goal would probably be to get with your managers, use the goal map and set a goal for them to learn an onboarding process, whatever that is for your company, and then teach them how to use the tool with their new hires.
Yeah.
Because my experience in this area is that managers, they don't know what to do. I mean, they barely know how to manage. Let's just be honest, right? Some people are promoted into management positions because they've been there the longest, not because they really know how to manage people.
Or
so
because
then
they performed well, which is a different skill than managing.
Exactly. Yeah, they may be a great performer, but they just don't know how to manage people, or processes. And this is a process. And so getting those people up to speed and trained is important. So you've got to set something up where you can actually train them. And of course, this has to be productive. You want to use your time wisely. You don't want to take time away from their productivity, their goals. So, it's not like you want to say, okay, all the managers come together for a 3-day workshop. I mean, they're just going to want to kill you at that point, right? I know I'm one of those people, like, just tell me what to do and let me do it. I don't want to go on the company retreat. I don't want to do those kind of things. I want my free time to be my free time and my work time to be my work time, and let's get to work. And so a lot of managers are that way, or they're such a poor manager that they're afraid if you get them in that environment, you're going to find out that they're really a bad manager. So you kind of need to set it up as you're coming alongside them as a guide. You're coming alongside them. I know HR is not your strong suit. You're a supervisor of whatever department. You're a tech supervisor, but HR matters. And I'm going to help you in your department onboard your people well and come alongside them as a coach in that way. It'll be a lot different than, here's the stack of paperwork your people need to fill out and make sure you do it. I think sometimes people are they don't understand the importance of it, right? They don't understand the legalities of it. And this is where, from the leadership down, right, they really need to be on board. If your C-suite and leadership team is not on board for this, that's a struggle right there. But they really need to be on board that onboarding is a job for everyone in the company. It's not just HR's responsibility. And we talk a lot about that in the book. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest obstacles to overcome, is that people just want to stick them in, go see HR. And it's like, but everybody's responsible for the culture. Everybody's responsible for making sure that the boxes get checked.
Yep.
And you're covered on all the legalities of everything as well.
And this is, it's still on topic, but to this, I was doing an interview recently, and HR, the topic was how HR can drive company decisions. And I think this is where it can come into play here, because you've got to have the leadership team on board. And a lot of times people think HR is more fluffy because it's people oriented as opposed to having hard facts. And my advice always in this type of situation, if you're dealing with trying to convince others in leadership and these managers, what kind of statistics can you show them? How can you turn it into numbers? And, what is your turnover rate? And this is, if that's the issue, and that's why we're trying to onboard better, show them those numbers so they can start seeing where the money's getting lost and time. And if you can help that build your story to get them convinced to be on board for this, that may help, is try to quantify it where you can.
Absolutely. See, that's why she's a numbers girl. That's why. And it's so true, because no one else wants to see money going out the window, right? Because when money's going out the window, that means you're not getting a raise. So we got to keep the money here so we can continue to pay our people well and treat them well. So money definitely talks, right? And when people understand the losses that come with turnover, or just poor onboarding at all altogether. I mean, we're talking about onboarding leading to, people exiting the company, but sometimes onboarding just leads to really cruddy employees that stay around for a really long time and do a really poor job and just slide under the table and collect their check, and they're not doing anything for your company. And then you're like, we need to hire somebody to do, and then you're hiring someone to do the job that you hired this person for because they're not getting the job done.
Yes. That's actually one of the quotes we added in the book, was the expense of having, when someone leaves, there's a lot of cost there, but the cost of having someone stay when they're not trained well, that is also very costly. So, so as we're talking about specifically with goal setting, I'm going to frame it to get started, is that when you are working with the new hire, and this could be HR, this could be the manager, maybe it's everyone together, depending on how your company's set up. The first thing you really need to do if you're talking about goals is share some company goals with the new hire. What are the big overarching goals? Now, ideally, each company should have these. Some may not be up to speed on this, or maybe they get neglected a little bit, but this kind of helps tie into your vision and your mission, however your company defines that. And when you can share these overarching goals, and then the next step is show the new hire how their day-to-day work ties into this, how they can support the company mission and the company goals. Because when they can see that, they're going to start seeing their worth. They're going to see why it's important for them to get trained and to perform well. So start at the top level, and then we're going to trickle it down from there. Now, the next step, you've got to think about what goals do you have for this person? And, some typical onboardings, 90 days, some may do 30 days, some may not have a set time. And it could depend on the type of position and the type of company. So you'll see on the tool that was sent out, and for those of you that don't have it yet, we will send it again afterwards. But think through a few questions, and these are the ones that we prompt you to think through when you're trying to say, what are the onboarding goals? So what does success look like for the new hire? You've really got to be able to define that. And that's also something that we encourage you to include in a job description. What does success look like?
Yeah, I'm going to pause you just for a second, because as you go through this, what you're going through right now, I think it's going to directly address Audrey's question.
Okay, let's go for it.
She says the biggest challenge, she says, like others, is not having an onboarding, like not having an endpoint for onboarding. So once they release them to their managers, it's kind of a free for all. When does it actually end? Are they trained? Are they not? So this is perfect tie-in to the goal map.
Definitely. And also to add to your comment that it is particularly sticky with so many working remotely. And Brenda and I've worked with lots of remote companies in consulting, as well as those other places that we have worked. And this is where setting those goals is actually key. And that may be check-ins on a regular basis. And also in the onboarding process, we encourage that you have like an end of onboarding review. And this isn't just to review the new hire's performance. Like traditionally, it's also so the new hire can review the onboarding, the whole process, and how did they think it worked. And this is where you can keep on improving your systems and make sure that you're serving the new hires well and the company well.
Yes, I think specifically, Audrey, to answer your question with the goal map, we talk about having a 90-day process in the book. And of course, depending on the companies, that can vary, right? Because some people's processes within their companies, their order of operations is a lot quicker. So they have to bring people up to speed quicker. Some people's maybe longer. It just depends on the type of company. But if you have a specific set time frame, and then that is actually reflected on your goal map. So for us at the top of the goal map, there's an end date, and set that for 90 days out. And then, break it down what those milestones are. And as you're having those check-ins that Amanda mentioned, either you can be checking in with the new hire, or the manager's checking in with them, make sure that they're hitting those milestones. And then if they're not, that's a chance for feedback where they can say, maybe they need clarity on it. Amanda's really good with me as a business partner. She's fantastic at this. If I have a to-do that sits on my to-do list too long, she's like, okay, we need to discuss it because there's a reason why you're not doing it. So do you need clarity on it? Do you need, whatever? And the minute we discuss it, it's usually done that day. And so it's a matter of just needing more clarity on it. And, you would think as a business owner, I'd be like, hey, give me more clarity. But because I have so much on my to-dos, I just skip it and go to the next one. Right. But it'll fall through the cracks. And that's the same here. These new hires will fall through the cracks if we don't hold them accountable. And we don't come back and say, hey, did you hit your first milestone? What does that look like? Do you have any questions? Is there anything, is there any friction? Is there anything we need to change? Do you need more tools? Do you need more whatever to make sure you get to milestone number 2? And I know we kind of skipped ahead because I jumped right into the goal map. But if you want to back up and collect anything I missed there, Amanda, feel free.
Sure. So a couple other questions that you can think through when you're setting what is the goal for onboarding. We'll do this, and then I'm going to share screen and show the goal map. And those of you that still have questions we haven't gotten to, we will get to them, we promise. So a couple other things you can think of are, is the goal to have them fully trained at the end of 90 days? Are they working independently? And a lot of this depends on the position, but think through that. And then get specific. Is there something they're supposed to create or implement or sell during this time? What are those action words from their job description? Because those are usually filled with action words of what their job is going to be. So look through some of those action words and say, oh, that is what we need them, by day 60, we hired this person specifically to help us with this new project. So they should have at least created maybe the outline for a PowerPoint presentation or whatever it may be. So think about those action words and what they are actually doing every day. So I'm going to share this goal map real quick and how this one page can be used for so many things in your business, not even just for new hires. So obviously you're going to have to define your goal, and that's going to take a bit of time working through possibly. What problem does it solve? And because that's when you hired somebody essentially to solve a problem. You hired them because there's a vacancy, because a company's grown, whatever it may be, that is a problem. And this is what you're doing to do. And what's the solution? So those are all kind of hand in hand. And then we want to make sure that this coordinates with the company vision, as we talked about, the big overarching goals for the company, and that it supports it. And then this is where we get into the really actionable part of it, is when we're talking about how is it measurable? What's the end date? Is there a quantity? What does the result look like? And when we define these well, then we know what our goal is. And we can't just say trained well in 90 days. That doesn't really articulate anything for us. So let's get real specific about measurables, because
operating on your own, that's not measurable. That doesn't mean that they're actually doing their job right. Amanda's really good at this. When we've worked with some people before on setting their goals like this, and people will spout out their end goal, well, I want it to be some glorious vision, right? And she's like, okay, measure it. How do you measure it? And that's the real important thing, is to have it be measurable, because if it's not measurable, how do you know you're even inching towards it? It has to be something that you can actually tangibly measure.
Yes. So once we work a little harder and get that measurable goal in there, how is it measured? What does it take to accomplish this? And I think this is where we see a lot of disconnect. And back to some of the questions too, is that this is where it requires the manager, possibly, or somebody else. What does it take for this person to accomplish the goal? Do they have every tool or software they need? Do they have supplies? Do they need one-on-one time with a specific person on a regular basis? Do they need to be able to delegate something to somebody else so that they can focus on this? Do they need
have they even met that other person, right? Have they even met the other person? Does the other person even know there's a new hire coming on? There needs to be a connection made there. If they're supposed to, work with Susie in the tech department to come up with a new social media plan, then those people need to meet, and there needs to be a plan in place for that to happen. You can't just expect them to go chase down the person and be showing up like, hey, I got this goal map and I'm supposed to do these things. And Susie Q's going, who are you? Like, that's not good onboarding.
Yes. So this is why it's really important. So think through, who do they need to have contact with? Has that meeting been set up? Have introductions been made? And the other person, we need to set goals for them that, like, this is important in your job, that you need to work with the new hire on whatever this project is, share some time with them, train them on something, whatever that tangible piece is. But that also means that they have to know that ahead of time, so that they can prioritize their work around it and understand that
be prepared.
And be prepared.
Yeah. And be prepared. That's the worst, right? When you bring in a new hire and you're trying to train them with somebody, and the person's like, their desk is a mess. They're just not organized. They're like, hold on, I don't remember where my binder is, or where the file is, or I can't find it in my computer, whatever. It's just not a good representation of your company. So preparing that other person on the back end is really important, so that they know that, hey, this person's coming in, make sure you have XYZ ready for them. You need to show them this. We're going to train them on this. The other thing with that is, and we've talked about this in the hiring process, we talk about it in retention as well, mentors and things like that. But making sure you choose the right person to work with the new hire, right? I
Yes.
saw just recently on this page we follow on Instagram that has all the bad HR stuff that happens. Somebody, there's like a dumpster fire and the guy's like, yeah, this is the way we've always done it. And that's not the person you want to introduce you to your new hire. Dumpster fires are not okay. And so you want to make sure that the person that you're bringing alongside this new hire is not only prepared, but that they're a good representation of your company, they're productive, they understand the company culture, all of those things. Don't connect them with the weakest link on your team and expect it to go well.
Yes, definitely. So once you've established what do they need, the who and the what and all of that to be accomplished with their goal, this is where let's break it down. And this is actually one of Brenda's greatest strengths is being able to create milestones from far off in the distance in 90 days. This is what the goal is. Now let's work backwards on if it's a 90-day, what do they need to do in the first 10 days and then the next 10 days? Because it has to build on it. And if you don't set these milestones, it's going to be overwhelming. And
Yes.
some of these, when you write them down, it's like, well, that's kind of silly. I know that they have to get logged into the system and know how to check notifications and whatever your software system is. It does sound a little silly, but they can't get to step 5 if they haven't done step 1. So let's really break it down. Step 1's being able to log in and learn where to do notifications, whatever. And then
because let's be honest, step 1 might include they need to get with the tech person. They need to get their logins. They need to get their computer signed out. It depends on the company what all step 1 really includes, right? They may have to get their computer shipped to them. They may have to go out and purchase a computer if they're remote and turn in the receipts and get all the passwords. And step 1 may really include a lot. And so while it sounds silly, it can be, first of all, these steps can be fulfilling for the person. Remember, we talked about that earlier. So they're checking it off the list. Okay, I got a step done. Now they feel like they're moving towards their goal, even though it may be a really small step. You're helping them to feel welcome. You're helping them to feel accomplished. And I mean, don't make it so silly that they're like, oh gosh, this company is like, this is kindergarten class. Because trust me, people like me will be like, come on, right? I'm the person that said, do I have to sit through this training again to learn how to use Microsoft? I mean, come on, right? You don't want to torture them, but giving them some little accomplishments. People love to check boxes, right? That's why people make lists. That's why people make lists of things they've done too, right? So they can just cross them out. But Amanda's right. I love this process. We do it in our company. We do it every quarter. Sometimes we do it every week when we meet, if we come up with something new that we're working on, but we sit down and do this often, breaking down the goals. And when we publish books, which we've got one on the horizon right now, and hey, we're ahead of goal. When we do that, we start, where are we at? What's the time frame for this? What's the time frame for that? What's the time frame? Because you can't set the dates just willy-nilly either, right? So if step 1 is really going to take a day, then put a day. If step 2 is really going to take 3 weeks, or there's going to be some research or whatever, make sure you put a date that corresponds with the actual action, because you don't want to give them forever to do something that really only takes a day. And then they're like, okay, now what am I supposed to do the rest of the time? You want to really set them up to work together. What were you gonna say, man?
And then the other part of this is if any of these steps include another person or waiting on turnaround from something for another person, be sure that that's taken into consideration for the dates. And then also that the other person is aware of this so that they can also work on this timeline. So they may need to be a part of it. And this is where, from a lot of the comments, it's managers need to be involved.
Yes.
If these steps and this goal has to do with their department, they need to be involved. And is it going to require another meeting?
Well, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. They need to be involved, because here's the thing. The bigger the company, you don't know what, and as an HR person, it's not your job to know what every single goal is in every single department. So you may not know that the marketing department has a goal this week that they're rolling out a brand new campaign and they're under a crunch time, and then you're trying to onboard someone in the middle of it and they're like, we don't have time for this. Like, we don't, thanks for bringing our new social media VA person in, but send her to the corner. We don't have time. So you need to make sure that it corresponds with what's going on in their department. And that's where, talk to the manager ahead of time. Do they have any big goals coming up? Do they have anything that would interfere, any obstacles? We do this from the get-go. We just mapped out 7 books on our calendar for the rest of the year, and we had to take into account travel time. I'll be traveling here, she'll be traveling there. Kids are in school here, kids are not in school there, whatever the case is,
Editors.
birthday, anniversaries, whatever it is, you
And
have to take into account, right?
yeah. For us, the biggest thing is, we're in control of what we do, but we're not in control of how long our editors take. And they do amazing work and we know how long it typically takes them, but we've got to make sure that we account for their vacations and those type of things as well. So this is
and that just happened to us.
communication.
We were ready to send the book to the editor and she wasn't back from vacation yet. And we knew she was on vacation, but she wasn't back yet. And, it worked out well. Everything worked out because we were aware of it, because we communicated. We actually sent a sheet over with every book and the dates that we would like, the turnaround times,
The milestones,
to make sure that she was available, because she may not be available. She may be having other projects or whatever, right? So if you're working with vendors or outside people, be aware that you're not their only client, and they may have other things going on too. They may have big events happening and they can't get to you or get to your new hire to help them either. So
yeah. So work through these steps, and to wrap up just this sheet, and then I'll stop sharing screen and they can see both of us a little bit easier. Also set a final review date of whatever this goal is. And at the end, you're going to describe what complete looks like. And this is, can you describe it? Is it attainable? But also have that date of when you're going to review it again, so that you can be like, yeah, this happened, or, oh, nope, we didn't quite get there yet.
yeah. And my favorite part of that whole goal map is the little bottom line.
Oh.
It says, add these milestones to your calendar. And it's so, so important. Amanda and I are all digital with our calendars. Hopefully you are, especially if you have got remote people and where you can see people's calendars and things like that. Having these on the calendar is so important, because if that's where they're working from their to-do list on their calendar, if they've got these meetings, they've got this, if they can't see those milestones on a regular basis, it might get by them. So make sure you put those on your calendar and that you're aware of what's going on when.
Definitely. Okay, so that was the big picture of this, and we can continue to nitpick. Let's jump into some of these questions and make sure that we're answering everything here. So let's see. Tim followed up on Caitlin's question. Great question. What are expectations that are set for managers related to the process? How and when are they evaluated on their onboarding performance? And I think that it's evaluation on everyone, right? So a lot of times, I mentioned this before, we evaluate a new hire after 90 days or whatever, but we need to give them the opportunity to evaluate. But also we need to evaluate the manager, whoever's involved in the onboarding process. There's another tool for this. There's a whole toolbox that comes with the book that you can actually download from our website. The goal map is in there, but we have other tools that we've done. And this one there's an onboarding feedback form for the new hire to fill out and talk about how they felt about it. And this is the opportunity for them to say, well, the HR people were great and I feel like they set me up well, but my manager was kind of MIA or whatever it may be. And this is going to give you good feedback. And this is where then, outside of being with the new hire, HR and the manager need to have a meeting, maybe leadership, however that is constructed with your company, and say, meet at the beginning of this, that you have a new hire coming in. This is what we want to see. And then at the end of it is, okay, how did you feel that went? Did you like this process once you have a full onboarding process for the manager? Was it too timely? Or did you actually see the benefit of it because you put in a new process, you set goals, and now this new hire is up and running a lot faster than anyone ever has before. And maybe you can see the success from it, but it's going to require some meetings and communication. And I'm the last person to want to have meetings for no reason. But sometimes you do have to have meetings so that you can discuss these processes and evaluate. Meetings are for discussion, evaluation, and then turning that into something that's actionable, not just to share feelings.
Yes. And this is where I'm going to just do a shameless plug for you, Amanda. So this is where if you feel like in your HR, like you want to implement this form, the goal map, and you're like, I don't really understand it completely and how I can convey this to my team, you can bring Amanda on virtually to your meeting and she can go through the form with your people and explain it. Tim actually has a question that pertains to the form. he wants to know where to put the information, clearly define the transparent roles, responsibilities, decision-making authority and such. So first of all, Tim, a lot of that needs to happen on the job description ahead of time, right? So that people know what their clear role and those things are. But in this process of a goal map and who's actually, taking which part, that would go under that accomplished with section. So if it's accomplished with, if I'm going to say, I'm co-authoring a book, I'm accomplished in this with Amanda, editor 1, proofreader 2, I'm putting what their responsibilities are. I'm putting their dates on there. We're going to have the book done by here. We're getting it to uploading here. All of those things are written there. And then everybody's aware of their goals, their timeframes, their turnarounds, and that thing. So if you are working with, more than one person in this situation where it really is a goal that's reliant heavily on other people, you could have a meeting with both people at the same time and go over the goal map at the same time.
And they may have their own goal map. That's the other thing to think about here is that if it's just the new hire, they've got their goal map, but you might actually set a separate goal map, print out 2 sheets, do it digitally, however it is, if you're paper or pencil or not. And the manager has their own goal map if there's a lot of other steps that they need to take too. So that way they know what their ownership is in it, as opposed to just maybe, they're set up on that. That's all they need to do. And then I just oversee them. And, Brenda and I, when we're both working towards an end product on something, we map it all out together, but then we highlight who does what, because we have different skill sets and we each are responsible for different parts. So we essentially create 2 goal maps so that we have our own and know where we are. But then when we do our check-ins, we can check up on each other for accountability's sake.
Yeah, absolutely. And so even if it's not a manager, Tim, if it's coworker to coworker, if they're just peer to peer, having each one of them having a goal map and having it clearly defined would be great. So if you were to create one, this is a tool that you use with the new hire, not for the new hire. So it's something that you would sit down together with them and discuss the goals and make sure that they're comfortable. Maybe they're brainstorming some ideas that they have. Maybe you ask them, what do you foresee the steps being, and you're talking it through and working it with them. It's not something you would fill out for them and hand it to them. So it's something that you could sit down with them, fill out, and then you could talk to the other employee involved, or you can get them both together, vice versa, however it works out for your specific needs. But making sure that everybody's aware of it and accountable for it is important. And it's just in that little accomplished with section. And if you happen to, if it takes a whole team of people, you may have it broken down in the milestone section too. In milestone 3 is getting it with this person and getting it with that person. Amanda and I, when we do our books, it does take a team of people. We've got a team of editors and, uploads and designers and all the stuff. And so we have to make sure that everybody's aware of when it's coming, what's happening, when. And so just, fill it out there and make sure that the roles and responsibilities as overall are defined in your job description.
Yes, defined in your job description. And then I think the other part of that is making sure everyone in your company has a good, clear job description. And that then goes to your, depending on what you call it, it could be your org chart, your organizational chart, your accountability chart. And we talk about that in the book a lot too, on how you should set that up and have it be more than just a job title, that what the role is of that person, so that a new hire can at a glance say, okay, well, they said I need to go talk to Susie in marketing. What does Susie in marketing do? And is there a document, team handbook, whatever it may be, that includes what are Susie's top 3 or 4 key roles, so that is more understood as to why they're meeting with them.
Yeah. And Tim, he followed up on Caitlin's question earlier, but I think he's actually asking us his own question as far as the expectations that are set for managers. And it really comes down to understanding the difference between onboarding and orientation as well. So there is a difference between the 2 processes. Orientation is really, well, I'll let you take it, Amanda. You're better at articulating this than I am, but there's 2 separate things.
Yes. And this is sometimes where things get confused. And, is onboarding orientation, is orientation onboarding? They're not the exact same thing. Onboarding is the overarching things that happen for the new hire in the first 30, 60, 90, whatever it may be. Orientation is a component of it, but not all of it. a company's orientation ideally should be the same for every employee. This is where they go get a badge. If it's in person, they find out where their parking spot is. They maybe sit through a little video of the owner welcoming them to the company and talking about the history of the company. It's where they receive the team handbook. They learn about the company culture, those type of things that are the same for everybody that works at the company. That part is orientation. And that part is typically handled by HR. HR does it the same for everybody. You go to the finance department, sign your paperwork so you can get paid, those things. Then the rest of onboarding is where it gets individualized for the new hire, for their job role, and for the team or department that they sit in. And that's where the manager is the part of it.
Yes.
And
Great explanation. I'm glad I passed it over to you. That's the key role there is that orientation is the same for everybody. And it's really an overarching vision for the company. It's the bigger company things that happen for everybody. It's a really important distinction. He also asked about how are they evaluated on their onboarding performance. I'm not sure if you're asking the managers or the new hire, but both would happen, as Amanda said, in the feedback process. And like she said, that toolbox is available on our website for free. You can go grab that, download it, and get the feedback forms. You can use those there for both. The new hire gets a chance to give feedback. And then if you work the process with your manager, you can have them give you feedback as well. And then you can evaluate the process and how it went.
Yes. You got a little glitchy there, Brenda. I think we're back though. Okay. So I'm going to drop the link for the onboarding toolbox that does have the other information in there from our website. So the toolbox is free to download. All the tools are discussed in the onboarding process book at length and with examples of how you do it. And really on Tim's comment, as far as evaluation and feedback, whether it's onboarding or not, and we talk about this a lot in other books, especially our retention book, is that we have to work on creating a culture where feedback is considered an opportunity and it's not a threat. And we do it so regularly that we're not intimidated by it. And that's for everyone. We don't just give feedback down the line. They need to be able to give it up the line too. And it needs to be constructive. And that's where you've got to really ask the right questions and not prompt for a big complaining session, but use it in a tangible way that you can come up with actionable steps that come from the feedback. And sometimes those actionable steps are just, that worked really well, we're going to do it again. That's always the best outcome, right? But we've got to constantly be evaluating and reevaluating and adjusting. Now, that doesn't mean spend a ton of time on those things, but you do need to check in. And if new hires are constantly, so let's say you've got several departments and there's one department that the new hires, you've got more turnover or the new hires don't seem to be set up as well, that's really a leadership issue that's got to come in and work with that manager. If it's working well in other departments, but not this one department, then it's
I was just going to say, emotional intelligence is vital when feedback's in play. And so anytime you're opening up a meeting for feedback, you need to make sure that there's at least one very emotionally intelligent person in the room so that they can guide it, right? So that it doesn't become just a complaining session and the meeting goes downhill and you're off agenda and all that stuff happens. You've got to have somebody there that can say, that's great feedback. Do you have any suggestions for how we can fix that or change that? And then they're taking notes and making some actionable items for it. And if you don't always have to solve feedback right then and there, right? So a lot of people think that if, I think this is a gender issue as well, right? So people often say, men want to solve problems. That's what they want to do, right? And some women are that way. I'm a problem solver. And so we want to solve it right then and get the answer and help the person. But sometimes you don't know the answer right then. And it's okay to say, that is a great bit of feedback. Let's all take that back and brainstorm some ideas on our own, how we can improve this process, improve this, whatever the complaint was. And then when we meet again next week, or we meet again on our regular schedule, let's bring our ideas back together and then, include that on the next agenda item so people will remember to do it. But having somebody emotionally intelligent in the room is always a good thing so that they can rein it in, because if not, it'll really get off kilter. It happens in any meeting, it happens in small church groups, it happens anywhere. It can turn into that really quickly. So emotional intelligence, and we talk about that throughout the books too, is important.
Yes. And referencing when you're saying, we might not have the answer, but then the next time when we follow up, we will, when our next scheduled meeting. And Taryn said in her comment that she loves a good 30, 60, 90-day plan. And I think that's fantastic when it comes to onboarding, because when you say, oh, we're just not going to meet till 90 days, and you leave your new hire kind of in the lurch for 90 days before they have an opportunity to give feedback, before you check in on them and see how things are going, there's so much time that could be lost and productivity to be lost. And really a new hire that could be lost then too, right? They may be like,
they could have already had another job plan by then.
Yes. So, so 30, 60, 90 day works great for her company, which is fantastic. And you've got to figure out what that frequency is for yours. But when you know that, and that also helps the new hire that they know, okay, we met at 30 days. I know I'm going to have this meeting again, even though my big goals aren't for 90 days. I know that I will have this dedicated time to check in, give feedback, ask questions, ask for clarification, whatever it may be, so that they can continue to work on being successful in their new position, but also not feeling like they're left out on their own.
Yeah. And in the book, we talk about, creating check-ins, especially that first week, almost daily. You're checking in with them and you're saying, how did your first day go? Do you have any questions for me yet? Tomorrow you're going to be doing XYZ. Do you have your agenda? Making sure that they have what they need. And then following up with them. And then maybe you're transferring that over. If you're the HR person, you're transferring that over to the manager to be checking in with them on a regular basis. Because especially if you're remote, that's the hardest one, right? That person could be in la la land and not check in for weeks on end. And then you're like, they didn't show up to the meeting because you haven't checked on them in 2 weeks. They don't work for you anymore, probably. They're just collecting your paycheck at this point because you haven't even checked on them. So when they're remote, having some kind of check-in, and there's so many different softwares out there now you can use. You can get on a virtual Zoom with them really quick. You can jump on Slack with them really quick. You can, just do a ping through Basecamp, whatever softwares you're using, create some kind of check-in system with them and let them know, hey, I'll check in with you at the end of the day, see if you have any questions for me, so that they're aware they have an opportunity for that. And that they're also not going, oh gosh, they're checking up on me every day. This is weird.
Well, and to add to that, when we talk about communication, and this is kind of a constant theme through our books, is when you communicate, be sure that you're communicating effectively and not just annoying someone, but also it's setting that expectation that communication will happen. So when you have a new hire, and it depends on their personality, right? Some people maybe they're majorly introverted and they're never going to speak up or ask a question that's not during a one-on-one session, possibly. So they're just not going to say anything throughout the day if they have questions. Then you might have one who maybe they're a little needy and maybe they like to chat, and whether it's through Teams or Basecamp or something, and you're getting pinged all day with questions from them. So set the expectation of, I'm going to have bookend meetings with you. We're going to meet maybe just for the first week, first thing in the morning and first day at the end of the day. So please,
this is gold.
Save your questions. Save your questions until the meeting time. That way they can just make their list, and whoever they're checking in, they're not bothering them all day, right? Now, if of course there's exceptions to that, if there's an emergency or something, but set the expectation of, I want you to gather your questions. We will talk at the end of the day, and I will be dedicating my time to answering your questions. And when they know that, they'll feel supported. It helps with just building processes and good communication. And HR may be the one doing those meetings initially, but then maybe a little bit with the manager. And as the timeline moves with onboarding, their time with HR will decrease, but their time with their manager will increase. So, HR is kind of holding their hand at the beginning and doing those check-ins, but then it gets to the point where HR doesn't do it as much, but they still should. And Taryn just said in a comment that she schedules a feedback meeting every 2 weeks at least. That is fantastic. And I think that's where, as HR, we're kind of letting the baby bird fly a little bit on their own, and we step back from them. Schedule that 2 weeks, schedule every 3 weeks, 10 days, whatever.
encouraging them to jot down their questions too, because it gives them a chance to clearly articulate what their question is, right? It gives them a chance to actually think through it. And sometimes in that process, they'll solve it themselves. And so writing down the questions is always a good thing, that they're aware, jot down your questions throughout the day and we'll get together at the end of the day. I'll give you an example of a time. I had an assistant that our schedules were missed a couple of times. And I said, and he's like, I have, a few questions for you. I know you can't meet. I said, just email them over and I'll respond. And this was probably some of the best communication we had until our entire time working together. He emailed specific questions over and I was able to respond everyone with, specific answers. And it was so clear because he had thought through the actual question and to articulate it instead of just coming to the meeting and go, well, I'm kind of struggling over here, but then he had to explain it in the questions. And so it really cleared it up. So if you give them a chance to actually write down the questions, that's always a good thing too. And then it also may help with your future onboarding of other employees, because the questions, if you see these same questions coming up time and time again, then you're like, okay, we either need to have a FAQ sheet, right? Because people are asking the same questions, or we need to fix the hole in the process so that these questions will stop coming up.
Definitely. It's always looking for the patterns. And when you see that, then let's backtrack and let's save ourselves time in the future. That maybe that's something that needs to go back into orientation for everybody, or orientation just specifically for a certain department, maybe. Let's see, Taryn, we have an onboarding group chat on Teams that is open for the first 2 weeks with access to key people where they can ask questions. That is fantastic. So here is your lifeline. This is how they can phone a friend and ask their questions and get them answered, even without having to schedule a meeting. And that's going to be great for, as like Brenda said, those emailed questions. That is it just a link that they need? Do they just need to be directed somewhere? Having access to be able to do those things, it's going to help keep them productive and keep them moving forward.
And having a point of contact, a specific place, is going to keep them from distracting your entire other team. Yes. We've seen that in companies too, where they don't know who to ask. So they're asking everybody in the company the questions instead of going to the direct person that they're supposed to, communicate with. So having that point of contact is great.
Yes, keeping it very succinct. And there again, you're setting expectations and communicating clearly and effectively with that. Here's where you go. Because when they start asking the person at the next desk, or that person that maybe they knew before they started this job, and then that person doesn't know, but they go ask somebody else, and you're starting to lose productivity at that point for multiple people in your company. And that's not good for the bottom line. So we want to keep things effective. And this is where having communication processes in your company are so important. And we're all about processes. That's really our key, but we talk about that a lot in all of our books and our LinkedIn articles that we post. We do them every other week. And how can we work to redo the processes in our company? Because as HR, we're really people focused, right? In companies, do you put people or processes first? And there's a blog that we did about this a while back, is actually when you put processes first and focus on them and get them doing really well, it actually allows more time to focus on the people, whether that's your internal people, your customers and clients. The more you can set a good groundwork with those processes, it's going to make things much more efficient and allow you to spend more time face-to-face with the people you need to spend face-to-face time with.
Absolutely. And in our books, we talk about it, but as well as we have a course that you can actually walk through the process of either onboarding, if that's specifically what you're needing help with, or the full course, which is all 4 of the processes: hiring, onboarding, retention, and exit, where you can do that as well. But what we really love about our processes is we've worked with several different companies, over the years, and in consulting and all of that, where you can bring it into your existing process, or you can scrap your existing process and start over with our process. So it really it works either way. We know a lot of entrepreneurs that work on a specific system that's out there and it works great, But when we were working with companies on that system, there were some gaps, right? There was some different things that we saw gaps. And so this is where our system will just come in and fill in those gaps, and where you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it may be something that there's a pain point in your onboarding process or your employee journey as a whole. And you're just like, okay, what is the pain point? And if you need help identifying that, certainly, book a consultation with Amanda. She can listen and pinpoint the problem. But if you feel like, I probably just need an overview and to see what I'm missing, then the course may be a really good thing to take a look at. And you have the prices and the links for that as well. It's a really achievable investment at
$129. $129 is the entire course, and that gives you all 4 parts. It's hiring, onboarding, retention, and exit. They're also available individually for $47.99 each. So if you're just like, or maybe your only thing is onboarding, depending on your company, and you don't need the rest, though I would say they all really tie together. Just start with the one if that's what you need. Or there is savings if you go ahead and get all 4, and there's a lot of benefit to that. So there's that option. And then again, if you haven't picked up the book yet, I highly recommend to do that. It's ebook, paperback, hardback. So there's $9.99 to whatever the hardback price is. So definitely an affordable option if you're like, I'm not so sure about needing a course yet, but I could use some more of these tools, because this goal map is just one of the tools. There's a whole toolbox. We step you through how to use them in the course. We give you examples on how to use them in the books and discuss it a little bit more thoroughly. And this is where everything that we do is we want to make it actionable. Our books are not, this is what the ideal onboarding should look like and everyone will be happy at the end. It's no, we talk about, these are what your challenges are going to be, and these are resolutions for the challenges.
Absolutely.
And in fact, how you can adapt it for yourself.
Yeah. In fact, our editor, when she went through these books for us, she was like, wow, these are so concise and to the point. And we're like, well, that's why we call them focus reads, because it is a focus read. It's concise, to the point. They're shorter books that just walk through each process. And that's why we broke it down into a series too, so that you could pick up the process that you need, or you could pick up the entire series and make it, your process as a whole. But knowing which process you need, if you don't know where your gap is, that's something that we could definitely sit down and listen and it helps when we know the size of your team, what your company actually does, what process you currently have in place. Amanda was talking about the toolboxes earlier. Each book has around 11 to 12 tools in it, each book. And so learning those tools and getting to know those tools is important. One of the things we talk about in there, and this is probably Tim will help you as well, is getting somebody to take ownership of the tool. So if Tim, you've seen this, you've downloaded the tool, you've kind of learned about it today. If you take ownership of it, if you start working through how to use it for yourself, and then take ownership of it for your company and become the trainer on it, right? It's really vital, because if you just start passing out the documents, and you're like, here team, we got this whole 48 tools for everybody to start using, but nobody knows how to use them, that's not going to be helpful either. So they need to be implemented. If you can take ownership of it, fantastic. If you need somebody to come in and train on it, we can do that. We can come in, we can train your team on it, we can train your managers on it, and get them up to speed and moving with these tools faster and more efficient.
Yes.
Less lag time.
Yes. And I think that's where so often a outside view and set of eyes can make it so much clearer. And we've done this with other things before. Sometimes when we're both like, okay, we've hit a wall, and we need to go get advice from someone else. And it's so critical. I mean, we can look at something and hammer it to death and be like, we still don't know what is happening here. But allowing somebody else to come in, let's see where the process is. What do you have now? And let's look at the gaps. And this isn't a time where we're going to come in and like an editor with red ink and be like, oh, well, this is wrong. And it is like, okay, these are areas of improvement, but let's prioritize them, because not every business can tackle everything all at once. And we're very realistic and practical in that. And practicality is something that I don't know.
Your middle name.
Well, would be the right word. Some would think it's really funny, but let's be practical about it. You can't overhaul everything in your HR department in 30 days. It's not going to happen. And the rest of your company will suffer if you attempted to do that, right? We've all got priorities. We've got to pay the people that are there. We've got to make our sales. We've got to bring in.
Yeah, you still have to work in the business. And that's really where, when we're talking about getting outside help or being outside help for you, if you decide to work with us in that fashion, it's really a matter of working on the business. We're not in the business day to day, right? You still have to do your day-to-day operations, but if you can bring someone alongside to help you work on the business for a short chunk of time, that's really helpful, because you still have to get those day-to-day operations, keep them flowing. And, sometimes taking a week out of your time is way too much.
Mhm.
If you just took a couple hours with us, got you up to speed, it would help speed the process along.
Yep.
Or we can say,
So Taryn just added a great question. I think that we can do this one and then we can wrap up for the day.
Okay.
It said, what do you think is the right amount of in-person versus recorded training for processes that everyone needs to know? So this is like your stuff everybody's got to know. So depending on your company, it may be, it may be a sexual harassment thing you've got to watch. It may be, this is our social media policy and those kind of things. What's good in person versus recorded? I've done it all. That thinking of the recorded ones reminds me of like the jobs I had in high school where I sat in the back room of the retail store with a computer and had to watch these recorded videos on end. And as an energetic go-getter 16-year-old, I was very engaged in probably the first one and then totally lost interest after that, right? So I think the balance one has to do with what type of person, who are you hiring? And, that example of retail, you've got a lot of young people and is it going to keep them engaged? Or is it an office setting? And you've got to have a balance. There are I am all for creating training videos. So let's create them because we want to simplify and we want to be more efficient. But we also don't want someone to spend the first week and spend 35 of their 40 hours staring at a screen, watching recordings. They're not going to listen. They're going to listen at the beginning. They're not going to listen at the end. It's not useful. So if you do have a lot of those created, I encourage you to create a lot of them. Create them, have a library of them, but space it out with how much they have to do. And then also they're still in that library so they can be referenced. And I think that's the other part where you're going to look at the priorities for them. What's the top priority that they need to know? And let's bump those training videos to the top. If there's some that's like, they need to do this, but it's not first week priority, it's not first 2 weeks priority, it's okay to have them watch videos on some things. Their second month of being employed with you, as long as it's not legality stuff that has to be done before, that kind of thing, it's okay to push it. So when you kind of look at the matrix of it, just be sure that you're balancing that in-person time or that active work with watching a video.
Yeah. And I would follow up with that and say, if you don't have somebody in your company first to make the videos, hire an outside person. We can help with that. We have resources as well. If you're making the training videos, get the person that's making the videos that actually wants to be making the videos, right? So at our a company we worked with, they wanted me to make videos to do that. I'm like, that's not me. Like, we need to get this guy to do it. He's fantastic. That's his skill. Like, get him. And everybody loved his videos. And the thing is creating that library, like she talked about, because people will forget, even if they watched it the first day, if it's an actual training video where they need to learn how to do something, like, for instance, they need to learn how to set up their out of office on their email thing, right? They might not need it the first day because they're not taking vacation. But 6 months from now, they're like, oh, I'm going on vacation. I need to set my audit out of office up and I don't know how to do it. Well, instead of asking someone, go watch the 2-minute video and figure it out. And if you have that library there, that really help them. If that's a standard you have in your company for how email signatures and things like that are set up. So if you have those types of things, that's great. On the flip side of that, I would say if it's an in-person training, make sure that you have somebody who knows what they're doing and enjoys in-person training and is not going to be like, well, and just it's so-and-so, and then, okay, well, just sign off that we did it. We're good, right? You don't want that person covering the training. You want the person covering the training that is passionate about the topic, understands the importance of it, and is actually covering it. The other thing I would say on that is if it's a hands-on type of situation where it would be better to do it in person, make it in person. If it's truly something where you can share screen and they're looking and things are moving around on a screen, that's probably better. If you're doing a talking head, like we are right now, if you can do almost a Q&A session with another coworker or with the HR person, maybe the manager of that department, or where it's two people, it makes it a little bit more dynamic than just one person talking. You may do frequently asked questions in this department or something, and they're doing that. The other thing is making sure that if it has to do with an office situation or a plant or a industry where you can move around and actually show them things in the video instead of just talking, that's better too, right? Anything to get it more engaging and they're not just sitting watching you talk. So it really is balancing out your resources of who you have to make the training and be live in the training and all that with the actual content of the training and figuring out which is which. So I would just make a list to start and literally make a list of who could make videos for this. Are you going to have managers in the department? Might not be their strong suit, might not be the best idea. You may find your one good video person and ask them to do videos for the entire company. Mm-hmm. And then on the other list, make a list of all the training videos you need. And then like Amanda said, start prioritizing them. Which ones have to be watched the first week? Okay, let's make those videos first and get them going. And then, start backtracking. And then you can start having each department make their own videos and things like that. Because there are department processes, right, that is specific to each department. And those videos may come in handy. And then having an overarching library of videos, but then having each department have their own and not having cross access necessarily. You don't want, the last thing you want a new hire to do, and we have seen this happen before, and I almost vomited when I've heard this. We had a new hire that the manager literally had them sit down and watch 35 hours of video their first week.
That's what they did.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
First of all, that department doesn't have 35 hours worth of training. So why are they training on the entire company when they work in one little department? So don't waste your new hires' time. Don't waste your resources and your money paying someone to watch videos that doesn't apply to their department. So make sure that you have those separate pulled out if you're going to create a digital library for those, because you don't want them doing that. Now, when they're cross training for a department, that's a different story, right? And that's a different book. But yeah, when you're doing that, that's fantastic to have a video where you can show them how to cross train into another department, but not if they don't need it.
So last question, real quick, Tim asked if the toolboxes include tools or techniques to onboard new hires to the behavioral norms of the company. So, these are the unspoken rules, and we do talk about it in the book. And one of the key parts of this is actually, in our opinion, is mentorship and having that person that these are things that are not in a team handbook. It's not there, but having that person who can discuss those things, I think that really goes down to mentorship a lot. And Tim, if you go look at our blogs or our LinkedIn articles, Cut the Chaos LinkedIn, I'll find that link and reply to you in that one. I did a couple of series here recently of articles about mentorship, and I think that's a great part of it, but it is discussed in the book as well. So I think that's it for today. Excellent questions and feedback and conversations for this. We always enjoy doing this. This is such a good time to discuss our content because it was always swirling around our heads. So we put it into books and courses, and we like to share it with everybody. So all of the links are there. Again, you can opt in for today and just get the replay and the tool we shared, the goal map. The link is also there for the onboarding book or any of the other Team Solution Series books. And we have our course. I am available for consultations. I love really getting to work individually and customize what you need for your company. And we will do this again in July, and the topic will be on retention. So be aware of that coming out soon, and we'll share details about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us today. It was great.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.